Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. Beginning with a tragic update to a missing persons story in northeast Nebraska. The Colfax County Sheriff's Office says a body found southeast of Schuyler last week has been identified as 30-year-old Nathan Johnson. Johnson had been reported missing, you might recall, in November. His family had told authorities at the time they'd last seen him in late October. Authorities tell us autopsy results are still pending. No details about whether or not foul play is suspected have been released. Firefighters sent to a college campus in southeast Nebraska Wednesday night where fire broke out in the basement of a residence hall. Doug Kennedy has more.
Beatrice firefighters were sent to Homestead Hall on the campus of Southeast Community College. Students are on winter break, but SCC Security and Safety Coordinator Mark Mind said about 20 students, including student athletes, were evacuated from the building to the adjacent Kennedy Center. Acting Fire Captain Nate Cook explains what firefighters encountered.
The cause of the fire was a floor cleaner that was downstairs in a storage unit that was plugged into the wall. Luckily, it was right above a sprinkler head that was activated that essentially extinguished the fire.
Audible and visual alarms activated at the residence hall, the newest student housing facility on the SCC Beatrice campus. The fire occurred in a kitchen and laundry area in the basement. Cook said smoke spread throughout the basement and reached all three upper floors. Teams of firefighters were using pressure fans to remove the smoke.
The floor cleaner is completely gone, and there's a lot of water damage downstairs due to the sprinkler head being activated.
8 firefighters were on scene. A pumper truck and ambulance were dispatched. The fire vehicles were back in service by 7:15 p.m. Firefighters remained on scene to meet with a Nebraska fire marshal investigator who was summoned to the campus. There were no injuries. Any fire damage was confined to the small area in the basement. The fall semester at SCC ended December 13th. Students returned for the full spring semester on January 21st. From Beatrice, Doug Kennedy, News Channel, Nebraska.
Influenza season has turned tragic in Nebraska. The Department of Health and Human Services says a pediatric influenza-related death has been reported in Nebraska. The exact location wasn't specified. The state didn't say how old the child was. According to the CDC, Nebraska's fatality, one of just 3 pediatric flu-related deaths in the nation so far this season. The DHHS urging parents to get their kids vaccinated against the flu and encourage the use of antivirals like Tamiflu to fight flu-like illnesses. This may sound like a broken record, but the U.S. once again facing a potential government shutdown. House members scheduled to return Thursday to work out a plan, but time's running out. John Lawrence has more.
Let me talk briefly about the funding of the government.
The threat of a potential government shutdown is hovering over Washington, D.C., and the clock is ticking.
We can avoid a shutdown. It'd be a very inopportune time to have a government shutdown.
Friday, December 20th is the deadline for Congress to keep the government funded, and the bipartisan bill House Speaker Mike Johnson negotiated this week is being scrapped.
We're still having conversations with our members, with a lot of other folks too, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, but we are still talking about some good ideas.
The decision to start all over came after President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance issued a joint statement blasting the proposal, saying, quote, Republicans must get smart and tough.
House Republicans have now unilaterally decided to break a bipartisan agreement that they made.
Meanwhile, the White House said in a statement, Republicans were playing politics over the funding issue.
House Republicans will now own any harm that is visited upon the American people that results from a government shutdown or worse.
Nebraska, one of 13 states taking on a Native American tribe in court over the Dakota Access Pipeline. A federal judge this week allowed Nebraska and 12 other GOP-led states to add themselves as co-defendants against the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe's lawsuit with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. At issue, the Dakota Access Pipeline, which the tribe argues was unlawfully allowed by the Corps. The Corps has not filed an answer to the lawsuit. The Standing Rock Sioux Tribe's opposition to the pipeline's Missouri River crossing drew thousands of people who demonstrated and camped for months back in 2016 and 17 near the crossing. The path of the pipeline doesn't go through Nebraska, but in a statement Wednesday, State Attorney General Mike Hilgers said keeping the pipeline open would have significant economic benefit to Nebraskans. Big economic news, Amazon bringing another distribution center to Nebraska. Economic officials in Columbus announced Thursday that the online retailer bringing a so-called last mile distribution facility to Columbus next year. Last mile delivery is the final step in the Amazon delivery process. Amazon says they'll be building a 50,000 square foot facility on land north of town that had been owned by Loop Public Power District. The utility says they finalized the sale of the land to Amazon earlier this month. Economic officials say they estimate the new plant will mean about 50 new jobs locally. A couple of positive signs for the economy and one not so great sign in the Midwest. First, the overall economy, which grew at an even faster pace this summer than previously reported. The Commerce Department's final estimate found all goods and services produced in the economy rose at an annualized rate of 3.1% in the third quarter. That's up from the previous estimate of 2.8%. The revised gross domestic product figure factored in stronger consumer spending and higher exports. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell praised the persistent strength after announcing the third consecutive rate cut on Wednesday. Meanwhile, first-time filings for unemployment dropped last week after a spike in late November. That's according to a report from the U.S. Department of Labor released Thursday. There were an estimated 220,000 initial jobless claims filed during the week ending December 14th. That's down 22,000 from the week before. The nationwide rebound wasn't felt in Nebraska, though, as first-time claims jumped for the third week in a row in the Cornhusker State, up about 28% from last week. Continuing claims dropped in Nebraska, though, by about 3% from the previous week. Meanwhile, there is not as much economic optimism in the Midwest. The latest Rural Main Street Economy Survey, published by Creighton University, plummeted back below growth neutral. The survey of bankers in 10 Midwest states had moved above growth neutral in November, a so-called Trump bump of enthusiasm following the election. That optimism faded just 1 month later, with rural bankers saying the lack of a farm bill and increased input prices, higher interest rates, and low commodity prices working against the local economy. GoFundMe has become a go-to for many looking to raise money, and a new report shows that Americans are increasingly using the website just to get by. GoFundMe has released its annual giving report for 2024. The crowdfunding site said people increasingly sought help for essential expenses like housing costs. That number quadrupled this year in the U.S. as inflation continues to trouble Americans. According to the Consumer Price Index, the cost of housing went up nearly 5% from last year, and prices for life essentials like electricity and groceries also still high. It wasn't just day-to-day expenses, though. GoFundMe said this year communities raised nearly $235 million globally for relief and recovery efforts after natural disasters, and more than $300 million was raised for those impacted by crises in the Middle East. Well, after a remarkable 40-year career dedicated to shaping young minds and leading community initiatives, YMCA's executive director in Norfolk, Randy Hagedorn, is retiring. From his early days as a preschool teacher to his tenure as CEO, Hagedorn reflected on his journey, sharing the milestones and proudest moments that defined his service to Norfolk and the YMCA.
We raised $14 million to add on field house and gyms and cardio area, wellness center and weight room. This year we're going to break $300,000 that we raised annually, and those dollars all go to help underprivileged kids and families that cannot afford a membership or a program, and swim lessons, gymnastics, soccer, whatever, and we use those dollars to help support those people, and I'm probably really proud of that fact that we raised that much money this year, and hopefully we continue to.
Hagedorn says after he retires, he plans to catch his breath and do his best to enjoy it. He says he's going to keep the blood flowing and stay active by officiating high school and college football and basketball games. Meanwhile, a new executive director for the Norfolk Family YMCA will be named later this month. You can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com. Click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. This is News Channel Nebraska.